begin by thanking Craig Allen for his gracious introduction of Senator Walker and for 31 years of service. 36. Who's counting? But thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I can't tell you how much I appreciate Harris Walker coming to be here. Please give me it's hard, I think, to remember and to understand the role that Harris Walker has played in our history. He is one of America's greatest advocates for public service, starting with the Civil Rights Movement and the Peace Corps. Harris and a generation of Americans answered a call to service. At a pivotal moment in our history, they stood up, they changed America, and they changed the world. So for him to be willing to pass off the torch in this way and to take the time that he has is something that I'm very grateful for. Before I start my formal remarks, I also just want to remind you that we've got this thing called the Iowa Caucus coming up in January. And I would be a very poor candidate if I did not remind each and every one of you that you have this unique opportunity to shape history. No one is going to have more influence over who's going to be the next leader of the free world than the people of Iowa. And so if you are an Iowa student, you need to go to the Iowa Caucus. And every year, every 4 years when the caucuses take place, people say, well, students never turn. And oftentimes, those cynics are right. This is one of those elections where I hope we prove the cynics wrong. So, part of what makes it tricky is the fact that you're not going to be in school on January 3rd. So, for those of you who are going to be going to your hometowns around the state of Iowa, not only do you need to caucus, and not only do you need to caucus for me, but I need you to get your parents and your grandparents and your cousins and your friends and Uncle Fred, and you need to take them with you to the caucus. And if you're going to be away for the holidays, come back on January 3rd at 6:30 p.m. and caucus. It is something that's critical for you to have. One last point. Obviously, we're in a big contest right now. There's all sorts of stuff flying back and forth between candidates. One thing that is indisputed is that we've got the best organization on the ground in Iowa. And it's made up of young people all across the state that are working their hearts out during this process. And so I want to make sure that, because they don't get paid very well, at least I can give them a little credit. I want to acknowledge my two field organizers in this area, Michael Haley and High Sapphire. And since I want to help them out a little bit, I intend to be persuasive enough today that you decide you're going to promise for me, we need you to fill out one of these support cards. They will be distributed on the way out. And we would love for you to fill them out because they help us keep track of how many people are caucusing for us and make sure that we give you information about damage to the police. So, all right? Okay, thank you so much, everybody. get caught thinking that there are two different stories at work in our lives. There's the story of our day-to-day cares and responsibilities. And there's the story of what's happening in the wider world. The story viewed through headlines and websites, a destiny to be shaped by forces beyond our control. I am here today to ask you to reject this notion, to invite you to take hold of the future of your country. Because your own individual story and the American story are not separate. They are shared. They will both be enriched if we stand up together and answer a new call to service, to meet the challenges of our new century. I say this to you as someone whose presence on this stage, I think everybody would agree, is unlikely. My father came from thousands of miles away in Kenya and went back there soon after I was born. I didn't know him well as a child. I spent a childhood adrift. I was raised in Hawaii and Indonesia. I lived with my single mother and my grandparents who were from Kansas. Growing up, I wasn't always sure who I was or where I was going. And then, when I was about your age, I somehow got it into my mind that I was going to be a community organizer. I've been inspired by the civil rights movement that people like Harris Walker had helped to organize. I love the idea of young men and women, straight-backed, clear-eyed, sitting down at lunch counters and marching or going to jail on behalf of justice and equality. There wasn't a movement around me back in the early 80s, but somehow I wanted to recreate that experience. And so I wrote letters to every organization in the country that I could think of. And for a while, I got no response. And finally, this small group of churches on the south side of Chicago wrote back and offered me a job to come help neighborhoods devastated by steel plant closings. My mother and grandparents wanted me to go to law school. My friends were applying to jobs on Wall Street. I didn't know a soul in Chicago, and the salary that had been offered was about $12,000 a year, plus $2,000 to buy an old beat-up car. I still remember a conversation I had with an older man before I left. He looked and said, "Ron, I'll give you a piece of advice. Forget this community organizing business and do something that's going to make you some money. You can't change the world, and people won't appreciate you trying." Then he said, "You've got a nice voice. What you should do is go into television broadcasting. I'm telling you, you've got a future there." Now, you may have had a point about the TV